Hi guys, welcome back. This is episode number 51 of Matt Chat, featuring an interview with one of the most influential developers of all time, Mr. John Romero. Who is John Romero? Now that's a question that has perplexed a lot of game historians today and will probably perplex game historians 20, 30, 50 years from now. I'll never forget the first time I met him. I was in San Francisco with my friend Bill from Armchair Arcade, and we were there filming some interviews for our gameplay documentary that I've talked about on this show. And you know, we'd met some people like David Crane and Steve Moretsky, a lot of our personal heroes, people that we of course deeply admire and were thrilled to meet. But you know, the truth is they were just normal people. Normal people who had done some wonderfully skilled things and rightfully celebrated. But you know, you wouldn't think anything was unusual if you saw one of these guys in a grocery store or a shopping mall. You know, they just seem like normal folk. But this is not true at all of John Romero. You know, he's a good example of what Malcolm Gladwell calls an outlier, if you've read his book. This idea that it takes, if a kid's growing up and puts 10,000 hours into something like music, they can, by the time they're of age, you know, they're out doing amazing, dazzling things like, of course, the Beatles did, or Mozart, or Bill Gates, or whoever you want to mention. And I think John Romero fits that profile really well. Now, I've got a huge interview with Romero here, so what I thought I would do is try to break it into some chunks so it'll fit on YouTube. And I'll probably trot those things out every so often. I don't know if I'll do them back to back. But anyway, this first episode is about Romero's early days, so the pre-Doom and pre-Quake, pre-Wolfenstein 3D era. And then the next episode, we'll pick it up there. And then the last episode, we'll talk about his fall, if you will, with Daikatana and the infamous magazine ad. So a lot more to come. So anyway, without further ado, here is Mr. Romero.
When I started programming in '79, that was the first computer that the first computer I saw was a mainframe. There was a terminal connected to a mainframe that was, you know, in the next room. It was an HP 9000. It was a massive room-filling computer, and the room next to it was full of terminals all connected to it on a timeshare system. Well, I love games, and I seen a computer. First was, wow, free games. First it was like, wow, I don't pay money to do this. And then on the actual mainframe terminal, before the Apples ever came, I said that, you know, I want to see if I can make something too, because these are kind of lame and I bet I could make something better. And so they said, yeah, you can program it in HP Basic. So it was like, wow, okay, how do I do that? And just got a bunch of basic keywords and some, you know, super basic information on how to, you know, type the line number and the statements and stuff. And so my first program that I started writing was a text adventure modeled after Adventure, because that was the first time I saw Adventure, you know, Colossal Cave Adventure, which was on the mainframe there. And so I wanted to try and make something like that. And so that was the first. I started making a game because I thought that the ones that they had were kind of lame compared to. I mean, I'm playing arcade games, right? And you go and see these dumpy games on these mainframes, and they're crap. And it's like, I want to make the stuff from the arcade, you know, on the computer that I don't have to pay money to use. So that's kind of funny because that's exactly what happened in the marketplace anyway. Everybody was copying the arcade games and making them, and selling them on the computers because that's kind of what everyone wanted to do. The arcade machines were like the design templates for all of the actual home computer games. So I was going up to the school and I was basically writing all that stuff down that I could get from the students, and the Apple Room was the most interesting after that point. Like, that was it. I was like, the Apple Room, this blows away those stupid old clunkers in the other room. This is what I'm talking about. Like, I didn't have a disk back then, so when I was typing stuff, it was going to go away as soon as I left the place, until I finally got a disk, because back then it was $10 a disk. During school, I was going, anytime that I had like lunch or whatever, I'd go to the computer room at school, which was full of apples. I'd spend all my time there, wait until after school, walk all the way down to the computer store, and then screw around, and then try and come back for the activity bus that can then take you back home, like for all the kids that do sports. I basically spent all my time on the Apple II. Like, as soon as I got home, I was on the machine until they made me go to sleep. And it was all about learning BASIC and just trying to make games. And it was all about just games. I love playing games, and learning programming was really fun. It was a different kind of fun that I'd never experienced, because learning how to code is, for a kid, that's not any normal part of a kid's existence. Before I went to England, I was, like super computer geek guy. And so, all I cared about was programming, didn't care about girls or anything. And so I just made game after game after game, and each one would always be learning one more new thing. Like, in this one game, I'm going to draw graphics. In the second game, I'm going to use a paddle. In the third game, I'm going to try and have the player shoot something. And, like one game after another, I'm going to make a sound effect. Whatever. So each game was always like doing something extra. And I knew in 81, and especially in 82, like I had reached the edge. I'd hit the end of what you could do in BASIC in 1982. That was like, I was drawing shape tables, I was optimizing my main loops in BASIC to do the minimum amount of stuff, but still there just wasn't the speed there. I had to learn assembly basically through the book and hand assemble my code and just write down all the opcodes. I'd write the assembly out, and then I'd hand assemble it with the opcode lookup tables, and then write it all out, do my bitmaps on paper, draw the dots, and then like turn that into hex, and do all that stuff. And then at school, they had Apple IIs. And so at lunch, I could go in and type in all my stuff that I had hand assembled the night before and watch it work on the computer. I came to England during the second half of the school year, right? And so they're like, well, it's a basic programming course, and you're coming in at the second half of it. And I'm like, look, that is not even an issue. Right, second day at school, I come to class, and she tells everybody to work on something, and she goes, you come with me. And so I leave with my teacher. She was the algebra teacher in school, trig and algebra and geometry and stuff. So she took me, and we got in her car and drove across base, because this was on a U.S. Air Force base. And so we drove to an area called the Aggressors Squadron, which is where the pilots and stuff are at. And so I went in there, and evidently she was out the night before and started talking to a captain and telling her all about this kid, brand new kid from California, blah, blah, blah thing. So he's like, bring him in, because we can have him get to work. So she brought me over there to meet him, and he was a really cool guy, and he wanted to show me the vault, because they actually had a giant vault door, like a bank vault door, that he had to like say some code words, and then they would open it, and then everyone inside would hide their stuff because there's someone coming through. And so I come in there, and he takes me through this bank vault to the very back where there's a Chromemco mini computer, on the side in a terminal, and said, "You think you can program that?" And I just looked, and they had books and stuff, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's HP Basic, so it's basic, whatever, it's easy." So it's like, "All right, how often can you work? I'm just like, well, whenever.
And that's all for this week's episode of Matt Chat. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've got a lot of great content coming up from Romero, so stay tuned to future episodes. Thought I would leave you, as I am wont to do, with a quotation. Neither intelligence nor imagination, nor both together, go to the making of genius. Love, love, love. That is the soul of genius. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, my friends. See you next week.